2 or 3 months had gone by without any mention of my being a prodigy again. And then one day my mother was watching the Ed Sullivan Show on TV. The TV was old and the sound kept shorting out. Every time my mother got halfway up from the sofa to adjust the set, the sound would go back on and Ed would be talking. As soon as she sat down, Ed would go silent again. She got up. The TV broke into loud piano music. She sat down. Silence. Up and down, back and forth, quiet and loud. It was like a stiff and braceless dance between her and the TV set. Finally, she stood by the set with her hand on the sound dial. She seemed entranced by the music, a little frenzied piano piece with its mesmerizing quality, sort of quick passages and then teasing, lifting ones before it returned to the quick, playful parts. "Nikan," my mother said, calling me over with hurried hand gestures. "Look here." I could see why my mother was fascinated by the music. It was being pounded out by a little Chinese girl, about 9 years old, with a Peter Pan haircut. The girl had the sauciness of Shirley Temple. She was proudly modest, like a proper Chinese child, and she also did this fancy sweep of a curtsy so that the fluffy skirt of her white dress cascaded slowly to the floor like the petals of a large carnation. In spite of these warning signs, I wasn't worried. Our family had no piano, and we couldn't afford to buy one, let alone reams of sheet music and piano lessons. So I could be generous in my comments when my mother bad-mouthed the little girl on TV. "Play note right, but doesn't sound good. No singing sound," complained my mother. "What are you picking on her for?" I said carelessly. "She's pretty good. Maybe she's not the best, but she's trying hard." I knew almost immediately I would be sorry I said that. "Just like you," she said. "Not the best because you're not trying." She gave a little huff as she let go of the sound dial and sat down on the sofa. The little Chinese girl sat down also to play an encore of Anitra's Dance by Grieg. I remember the song because later on I had to learn how to play it. 3 days after watching the Ed Sullivan Show, my mother told me what my schedule would be for piano lessons and piano practice. She had talked to Mr. Chong, who lived on the first floor of our apartment building. Mr. Chong was a retired piano teacher, and my mother had traded house cleaning services for weekly lessons and a piano for me to practice on every day, 2 hours a day from 4 until 6. When my mother told me this, I felt as though I had been sent to hell. I whined and then kicked my foot a little when I couldn't stand it anymore. "Why don't you like me the way I am? I am not a genius. I can't play the piano. And even if I could, I wouldn't go on TV if you paid me $1,000,000, I cried. My mother slapped me. "Who asked you be genius?" she shouted. "Only ask you be your best. For you sake. You think I want you be genius? What for? Who asked you?" "So ungrateful," I heard her mother in Chinese. "If she had as much talent as she has temper, she would be famous now." Mr. Chong, whom I secretly nicknamed Old Chong, was very strange, always tapping his fingers to the silent music of an invisible orchestra. He looked ancient in my eyes. He had lost most of his hair on top of his head, and he wore thick glasses and had eyes that always looked tired and sleepy. But he must have been younger than I thought, since he lived with his mother and was not yet married. I met old Lady Chong once, and that was enough. She had this peculiar smell like a baby that had done something in its pants. And her fingers felt like a dead person's, like an old peach, the once found in the back of a refrigerator. The skin just slid off the meat when I picked it up. I soon found out why Old Chong had retired from teaching piano. He was deaf, like Beethoven. He shouted to me, "We're both listening, only in our head!" And he would start to conduct his frantic silent sonatas. Our lessons went like this. He would open the book and point to different things, explaining their purpose. Key, treble, bass, no sharps or flats. So this is C major. Listen now and play after me. And then he would play the C scale a few times, a simple chord, and then, if inspired by an old, unreachable itch, he gradually added more notes and running trills and a pounding bass until the music was really something quite grand. I would play after him the simple scale, the simple chord, and then I played some nonsense that sounded like a cat running up and down on top of garbage cans. Old Chang smiled and applauded, and then said, "Very good, but you must learn to keep time." So that's how I discovered that Old Chang's eyes were too slow to keep up with the wrong notes I was playing. He went through the motions in half time. To help me keep rhythm, he stood behind me, pushing down on my shoulder for every beat. He balanced pennies on top of my wrist so I would keep them still as I slowly played scales and arpeggios. He had me curve my hand around an apple to keep that shape when playing chords. He marched stiffly to show me how to make each finger dance up and down, staccato, like an obedient little soldier. He taught me all these things, and that was how I also learned to be lazy and to get away with mistakes. Lots of mistakes. If I hit the wrong notes because I hadn't practiced enough, I never corrected myself. I just kept playing in rhythm. And Old Chang kept conducting his own private reverie. So maybe I never really gave myself a fair chance. I did pick up the basics pretty quickly, and I might have become a good pianist at a young age, but I was so determined not to try, not to be anybody different, that I learned to play only the most ear-splitting preludes, the most discordant hymns. Over the next year, I practiced like this, dutifully in my own way. And then one day I heard my mother and her friend, Lindo Zhang, both talking in a loud, bragging tone of voice so others could hear. It was after church, and I was leaning against the brick wall wearing a dress with stiff white petticoats. Auntie Lindo's daughter, Waverly, who was about my age, was standing farther down the wall about 5 feet away. We had grown up together and shared all the closeness of two sisters squabbling over crayons and dolls. In other words, for the most part, we hated each other. I thought she was snotty. Waverly Zhang had gained a certain amount of fame as a Chinatown's littlest Chinese chess champion. She bring home too many trophy, lamented Auntie Lindo that Sunday. All day she played chess. All day I have no time, do nothing but dust off her winnings. She threw a scolding look at Waverly, who pretended not to see her. You lucky you don't have this problem, said Auntie Lindo with a sigh to my mother. And my mother squared her shoulders and bragged, our problem is worser than yours. If we ask Jingmi wash dish, hear nothing but music. It's like you can't stop this natural talent. And right then I was determined to put a stop to her foolish pride.